everybody. This is Kaylani, and welcome to the Wild Wahine, where we share with you about the energy of the upcoming week. So, this week has everything to do with all things Venusian, which has to do with how we create balance and harmony in our lives. It has to do with our relationships, our partnerships, our coworkers, our siblings, our family members, our lovers, our boyfriends, our girlfriends, our friends, our children, all of those folks, all of those relationships will be a little bit under the microscope this week, and we're going to be having a lot of topsy-turvy energy relating to all of those things. Now, I also want to tell you that I'm just speaking generally about what's happening, the general energy that we're having. If you want to know where this fits specifically in your life, in your chart, you want to book a reading. And all of that information will be down below, or you can go to www.thewildwahine.as.me. So with that being said, we're going to start with Venus sextiling Mars. So Venus is in Aries right now, which is in Mars sign, the home of Mars. She's in a fallen place. She is not her strongest self. In terms of, I like to associate her a little bit with like Superman having like kryptonite in his pocket. You know, he's a weakened state. He doesn't have all the good gifts. We're going to be feeling this energy now into the 10th. It's going to perfect on the 8th. That's when it kind of comes to fruition, or it comes to a perfect point. So Venus, like I said, she is in a little bit of a beat up state. So the way that we're harmonizing things in our lives, the way that we are in our partnerships and our relationships might be a little contentious. It might be a little rough right now. Venus is still combust right now because she's so close to the sun, she's not seen, she's a bit hidden. So all things that have to do with Venusian things, which is basically how we all get along and how we do things, those things are kind of just a little bit crunched right now. It is making a sextile, which it tends to be more of a positive aspect. That is a Venusian aspect, a sextile. So some of the things that we're looking forward with this energy that might be good, or ways that we can use this, is to activate on things that are concerning our relationships and our friendships and our coworkers and all of that, to take action on that. We're going to have some energy behind it in order to be able to do that. So that should feel good. Putting out art, putting out creativity that comes from ourselves, creative pieces of work, which could be like poetry, which could be music, or anything like that that's beautiful, putting that out there, you know, kind of getting behind our work, really going after what you want in a romantic sense, going after somebody that you want is a really good thing to do. It can be about being assertive and kind of like asserting your ideas about what you want out there, and, you know, kind of problem solving through the issues that you may have. You know, Mars still is a malefic planet, so there is always going to be bumps and things that come up, but it is a sextile, so for the most part, it should, you know, even though it's going to feel like a bumpy ride, you know, there's some chop, you're going to land safely, especially because our next aspect is with Jupiter. So you're gonna have a safe landing, but it's gonna be bumpy, you know, it's gonna not feel good. You might have a couple of moments where you're just like, what the hell is going on here? So in that though, bringing balance, I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think that there's a lot of ways that we can bring balance to things. And when I think Venus is in the sign of Aries, bringing balance, it could look like a little bit more of an aggressive way of doing it. And we just want to make sure that we're doing things in a harmonious way. Like some of the archetypes with that, and, you know, I love to use movies or sci-fi because that's like my favorite. I think a lot about Darth Vader and how he was kind of told that he was going to bring balance to the Force, you know, and what we didn't realize is like he killed so many other Jedi, and, you know, he ended up like, you know, building the Death Star, which like offs planets, and, you know, having them underneath a huge empire. So, you know, that's bringing balance, but like doing a lot of bad things that you have to do in order to do that, which reminds me also too of Thanos. That's another idea, you know, like he wanted to make sure that there was enough resources, and, you know, he sees all of these horrible things that are happening in the world and wars, and if we just had enough, then we wouldn't go to war, we wouldn't do all these things. So snap, and I've offed half the people, and now there's enough for everyone. And it's like, well, yeah, but people are not happy. You've just offed, you know, 50% of the population. That's not okay. Dune in the Muad'Dib, you know, this prophecy, and we see a lot of this prophecies of folks who are going to bring something better and bringing something new, but then there tends to be a lot of bloodshed behind that, and all of the difficult things that you have to do in order to bring balance. You know, upset the apple cart to get it straight back up. We don't want to leave bodies of damage while we're trying to do the thing that's right. We want to make sure that we're coming from a harmonious place, and that might feel a little bit challenging right now. It could also look like, in the negative sense, aggressive aggressive love, aggressive conversations, having tough love moments, which we have in our relationships a lot of the time. It could be a lot of makeup, breakup patterns, negative patterns in relationship, a lot of cyclical patterns in relationships because Mars is in Gemini. So there is this cyclical, like back and forth, like a lot of bickering back and forth and arguments back and forth and kind of revisiting the same things over and over again. And like, when are we going to get over this in our relationship, in my family, in my work job? Like, when am I going to feel empowered to actually create some change and not keep going over the same thing over and over and over again? So we're going to have some transformation. It's just going to be bumpy on the way there. However, Jupiter is coming to the rescue, kind of. Jupiter is in Aquarius. Venus will be sextiling Jupiter. We're going to start feeling that from now all the way into the 13th. It's going to perfect on the 9th. What is Jupiter bringing? Jupiter's bringing the gifts, bringing some levity, bringing some love, bringing some compassion, bringing some ideas that are going to be good for everybody. Jupiter in Aquarius. Aquarius is very much like, okay, what is it? How can I suit everybody in this situation? What is something that everybody needs? How can I serve, the masses in that sense? So that's like kind of, good energy. Jupiter is a benefic planet making this sextile with Venus, which is also a benefic planet, even though she's in a little bit of weakened state. It's going to kind of sort of like buffer some of the bumps that you have. So you might have these moments of levity, these moments where you're just like, I can do this, I can do this. I don't have to tread so hard. What it might look like is different. It's not going to maybe look like all the cuddles, all the kisses, all of the things that kind of sort of look good on the outside. It might just be like, let's get in there, let's roll up our sleeves and let's fix our relationship. Let's fix our business. Let's fix our family. What is the tough work that we have to do? Is there counseling that we need? Is there support that we need? It's like really making an effort to bring about some change in a very tangible way, in an action-oriented way. It can be very, very good, even though those things are bumpy and they might not feel so good. And it might take a while to get back to like the lovey-lovey space, but you're actually putting in the work that needs to be done so you can have things come to fruition. Having clarity of thought and being open-minded about what's happening, maybe kind of using the mind a little bit more to problem solve things instead of maybe necessarily going like heart first into things. You're using the mind in that way just because you have that like, Aquarian aspect, which is very air oriented. It's like a good problem solver and like kind of out of the box thinking about how to do things and to problem solve them. Not necessarily known to be like deep in the heart, even though Jupiterian things tend to be that way and have like a lot of like spiritual type of transformation too. This challenging thing about that can also be that it's just excess. That tends to be the thing with Venusian things. Anything that has to do with like Venus and Jupiter, like when they come together, they have so much fun, but it's like way too much of the things that are yummy, and that can just kind of be super distracting, or it can lead you into a place where you're just overly indulgent in all of the feel good things, and we all know what those things are, right? Too much of all of that can actually like swing us in a totally different sense. We're like to the point where we don't want to deal with what's right in front of us because we're like so caught up in like the feel good stuff. So we want to definitely use these moments, though all of those Jupiterian gifts that we gift, we want to use them to work through the issues that we're having, not to escape from them. With Venus now squares Pluto. So this is going to feel a little familiar for you guys. We'll be feeling this on the 7th all the way into the 14th. It's perfecting on the 11th. The last time these two planets were in conversation was March 16th through 20th. That's when Venus was forming a sextile with Pluto. So maybe things were a little rough, but you got over the hump of it and things were okay. And now we're coming back to these two planets having a conversation. And their conversation today is actually way more intense. It's way more difficult to negotiate this conversation. So it has to do a little bit more with kind of foundational upheavals and the things that are simmering below the surface, how they're kind of manifesting and coming through, and what that means, and how you feel around the things that you cannot see that are bubbling up, that are kind of, you're just like trying to keep the pot on it, but it's like bubbling to the surface. Power dynamics is huge with this. Whenever Pluto is involved, there's always some sort of power struggle or power dynamic, or something where somebody's trying to exert their power over you, you're trying to exert your power over someone, you're trying to figure out what the power dynamic is in your relationships, with your jobs, with your family members, with all of those folks. All of these relationships typically have to do with interesting power dynamics. The perception of power, who has it, who wants it, how you get it, if you manipulate to get it, and all of those kind of different things. It also has to do with like passions and things that can be completely consuming for you, like soul consuming things. It could be a new relationship that you're just totally caught up in that has thrown everything else out the window in your life. It could be the loss of a dominant Venusian figure, a female archetype, somebody who embodies like sensuality, sexuality, love, the loss of the paradigm of that. It also could be transformation, being introduced to that type of Venusian figure, and being transformed by that, because Pluto does have this quality of transformation and death and rebirth. So there's loss with that, but there also can be like transformation with that as well. It could be transformational experiences with eroticism or with erotic art as well. So that's another thing that can come into the mix. Some of the challenges with this particular aspect is it can be very Machiavellian in nature. There is this quality that can be very much kind of narcissistic, using powers to seduce and manipulate people, using the means of Venusian things, which are sensual things, to manipulate people, the masses, and all of that. Using threats and ultimatums, which has another thing to do with just all kind of, Plutonian type things. Unhealthy relationships, secrets in the relationships, secret children, secret whatever that people are not coming forward with. That's kind of getting uncovered. That's being revisited. That, you thought you worked out, but then you have to go back again. Another, kind of slip up or something like that. Those type of things. It could be inflicting harm against yourself by making really terrible choices, or by physically doing that. It can also be doing that to others, just as a means of pushing people away, of not wanting to deal with the situation at hand. Insecurities coming to the surface. A lot of times with Plutonian things, a lot of times you see political figures being taken down by some sort of erotic scandal, sex scandal, sensual scandal, scandals involving women or anything like that. Also, you can see a lot of these archetypes play out in art too, because Venusian things do have to do with art. So erotic art, or art that is like provocative, and we can see that. I mean, we're currently right now dealing with both of those things. There's a congressman out of Florida who's dealing with a huge sex scandal, and we have a hip hop artist too who released this kind of album, and I guess a song and a video that has to do with like eroticism and like the devil and devil shoes, and everybody's like kind of freaking out about that. And then like, especially with that particular artist, this kind of concept that the artist was talking about of coming out and kind of like transforming himself and being who he really is, which is that kind of Plutonian aspect of the deep, dark things that were hidden about me, the sensual things that I kept, to myself and I didn't share with anybody. Well, suddenly now I'm sharing with other people, and I'm telling them, and I want to share those things. And then other people's reaction to that, and how they react to that, and how it's transforming them, whether they want to shut it down because of their personal beliefs, or whether people feel like it's art, it should be out there and it should be shared to everybody. All of those kinds of dynamics are at play with this. So those are like two very literal ways that we can kind of look at the astrology and see like how it's manifesting in a very like tangible way. That's really interesting, because a lot of times we look at it and it's very like kind of archetypal, but then there's just like these literal moments, and those two things are very literal in terms of like what's happening now. So our fourth and final aspect, in the background of all things Venusian that we're holding, all this romance and type of stuff, what we're holding in the background is Mars squares Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces, Mars is in Gemini. We can feel that energy now all the way to the 13th and 14th. It's perfecting on the 8th. And it really feels a lot like trying to control a dream while you're dreaming. There will be activation that has to do with finding creative solutions to problems. With Mars and Gemini, it really wants to activate, but it's really thinking about what's happening, thinking about all the details about what's happening. And then like with this kind of square to Neptune, it's this conversation about like, how can I use the creativity? How can I use imagination? How can I make those things happen in a place where I kind of can't see where I'm going? I'm steering a car, but it doesn't have brakes. Like I'm just trying to negotiate this space, but it's really difficult because the space is kind of, just really abstract. You might feel, attracted to spirituality, to like some sort of guru type figure, or learning more about yourself through things that are magical, like crystals and meditations and astrology and tarot and all of those types of things. It does have this quality of like, finding a new way of dealing with the challenges that's going on with you. You might also find like some dexterity between like using all of those spaces, your action, your mind, and how you feel about things. Like, and again, this is like if we're using this particular aspect in its most positive sense, like dreaming something, wishing it, and then like activating on it and doing it. That's a way to kind of meld those energies together. It could also have like a very literal sense, which is like water sports, water play, going into the water, having something to do with the water. It also could be about taking leadership in spiritual communities, taking leadership for yourself, or stepping up into a new sense of spirituality. And some of the more challenging ways that this particular aspect can manifest. One of the ways that I think that it comes up is through spiritual bypassing, which I'm actually going to do a complete separate video on because it deserves its own video. People who will say,
well, the bad things that happen to you in your life happen to you because you were thinking bad thoughts, and it's kind of, your fault, and, like, love and light.
Which I totally vehemently disagree with. I do agree with the fact that obviously we make choices and we kind of reap the consequences of our choices. But I do think if somebody is like asking for help and they're reaching out and they're like, help me to send them love and light, I don't know what that is. Like, how do you send love and light? Like, what is that? Like, send like cash and support and like let somebody sleep on your couch, or like pay for their counseling, or just listen to them talk and hold space for them. There's so many things that we can do. Don't know what love and light is, don't know how to send that, don't know what that is, but that'll be for a separate video that I do. But one can get caught up in that kind of thing during this time, bypassing things, just kind of like not really dealing with the problems that are at hand. But that's a whole other thing. Aggressively trying to find the truth, but then coming up against a brick wall and not being able to find it, or not trusting yourself to find it, not trusting yourself that you know what you're going through. It could look like a real big lack of self-confidence. Passive aggressiveness is something that can come up with this particular signature. Feeling energized, but then also petering out. So there really is a space with this particular energy, and just with all the work that you're doing, because there's going to be a lot of heart work that's done, and it might feel very draining and very exhausting as you're kind of doing the things that you need to do, as you're activating in that sense. Make sure that you're making time for self-care. That's going to be something that's super duper 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 important, that you're activating on stuff, but that you're taking care of yourself as well, that you're giving yourself rest, that you're eating well, that you're drinking enough water, that you're doing all of that, because it is difficult when you're going through challenging things with the people that are in your core space. Like, that can have a toll on you. So you want to just make sure that you're really being good to yourself. There also is a quality in the more literal sense with, Mars squaring Neptune, with having issues with water, flooding, plumbing issues, accidents that are related to water. It could literally mean like water in the body, so having to do with things like blood pressure, or even like pneumonia, or sickness, like mucus or water related sickness in the body. We can see that too. So thank you guys so much for joining. I'm so glad to present to you your astro forecast for this week. If you have any questions, or if you like this video, make sure that you like it and you tag people or you share it. That it would be fantastic to do. If you're interested in figuring out like how all of this energy specifically works with you and your chart, make sure to book a reading. www.thewildwahine.as.me. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Instagram and YouTube being my two favorite places that I post, I think, and upload more to. But have a wonderful week. I know it's going to be a little bit all over the place, but that's also okay too, because you now know like what energy you're working with. We do have a new moon that's happening on Sunday. I'll make a separate video on that. I will be doing horoscopes for that new moon to give some support. We have some really interesting astrology coming up next week too. So have a beautiful week, and aloha.